Welcome Home, a podcast for veterans, about veterans by veterans, is a project of Willing Warriors and the Warrior Retreat at Bull Run.
Good morning. I'm your host, Larry Ziliak, Director of Culinary Services here at the Warrior Retreat at Bull Run. And this week, our guests are Tammy Phipps. She's a retired major and CEO and co-founder of Driver Rehabilitation Center of Excellence. And with us as well is Richard Tully, one of her service advisors. And I'm excited to have them here today because we're going to learn about modifying vehicles to help warriors with mobility issues gain greater mobility. I mean, that's the key. When you lose your ability to get around, it's almost like you're a teenager again, wanting your driver's license so badly. So mobility, and especially in an area like this, where everybody drives, you can't really go anywhere unless you're driving. To have these vehicles available to you and something that you can operate despite your conditions, your mobility issues, is a godsend. And so I'm very, very happy that you're both with us. So welcome to the Warrior Retreat, number one. And number two, welcome to the podcast. I think, Tammy, we'll start with you.
Okay.
And if you just give us a little bit of background about your military service.
Sure.
And how you came to found this organization.
I am, like I said, I was an Army reservist, and I'm from South Dakota. And I was deployed to Iraq in 2007, 2008. And I was deployed as a combat stress asset. So I did critical incident debriefings at all my area of operation while I was there. So mental health as an occupational therapist. During my time, the Surgeon General of the Army had visited. My fob was Balad, and I happened to be on the fob that day. And I met Major David Roselle, who was his aide de camp. And Major Roselle was the first amputee to stay on active duty and return to theater.
Wow.
And so just visiting with them, well, what do you're a reservist, what do you do when you're not deployed to Iraq? And I am an occupational therapist, like I said, and my specialty is driving. And I had started a driver rehab program in the hospital that I was working on as a civilian. So they asked me to come to Walter Reed. And I said, that is a really cool opportunity, but I'm going home, right? The reserve component is a lot of what we call onesies and twosies, right? So you are attached to units just by need, I know in the Vietnam era, they called us spare parts. In fact, there's a book, right? And that's what we really are. And so, but that's very difficult, especially in the campaigns that we've had in the last 20 years. And what happened is I went from Iraq to my living room in 5 days.
Wow.
And life had changed significantly. The Surgeon General's calling me. Walter Reed is calling me. I said, you know what? I'm going to make a very big decision. And this is what I counseled everybody not to do, coming for reintegration, right? And I came to Walter Reed because they asked me to. And that's my calling, is I feel a need. I get up every morning and take a step forward. So I never had any sort of plan to do any of this. It was my calling. Is the best way I can describe it. So being naive and being from the Midwest, I was like, I can do this. There's going to be all this support. What I found was the government, and I had never worked for the government before. So the first thing that happened is I couldn't figure out where to park. I called the HR person when I hit Walter Reed in Washington, D.C., and I said, where am I supposed to park? She's like, figure it out.
Everybody's problem that's ever been to Walter Reed.
What?
Yes.
So first of all, I packed up everything I, could in my car and my cats, and I drove out here and had no idea. Had no idea what I was doing, but persevered, figured it out. Parking tickets became just a monthly bill for me. And I am a can-do attitude. If you tell me I cannot do something, I'm going to ask you immediately why not. And that gives me the answer of how we're going to loophole, right? So I started the first and only driver rehab program in the entire Department of Defense So 2008 into 2016, we were part of the BRAC when Walter Reed Army Medical Center closed, and then to Bethesda.
Right.
And the number of wounded warriors that came through at that time from 2008 to 2016 was the surge. I honestly, over 400 wounded warriors that I served, and many of them are still my very close friends. And I continue to help them as in the veteran community. So figuring out, my tagline is actually, it's not just driving. And that is twofold. It's not just driving, right? It's to get us where we need to be, to earn a living, to be a father or a mother, all of those roles, right? But it's even more than that. It is something that is so mundane and so normal and that you've taken for granted.
Yep.
And that's the most beautiful part of it, coming on post the first time and showing their ID, just like everybody else, getting flipped off. And as somebody with a mobility problem or issue, they're always visible, right? You cannot make chairs disappear. Sure, you can wear long pants, but not everybody can, and things like that. But it's an even playing field while you're driving. Nobody knows.
Right.
So helping them navigate, not just teaching them how to drive differently, but navigating all of the resources that they need to get there. So the VA benefits, what's available there and moving forward. And then in 2013, one of my former wounded warrior patients was Marine Corporal Joshua Hyman. He was injured in Afghanistan in 2009. I worked with him in 2009, 10, and then I heard back from him in 2013. He was paralyzed from the chest down, and is a quadriplegic. Mm-hmm. And he reached out to me in 2013, and he said, Tammy, actually, he didn't say Tammy, he said, ma'am. And he's like, I got to figure out how to do another thing with my vehicle. We got together and he said, are you ever going to start a business? You always talked about starting a business. I said, Josh, it turns out I'm not a business person. That's not my lane. Mm-hmm. I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm a hell of a therapist. I'm a great visionary, but I know nothing about business, right? So we partnered and we realized that there's a gap in services, not just for veterans, but for everybody else in the community that has mobility issues. And we realized the magic of Walter Reed, especially at the time when we had all of these wounded warriors, the magic, we called it the MATSI magic, right? Military Advanced Training Center for Amputee Center of Excellence, was the people, the connection, the camaraderie, the brotherhood. We are training together. Let's rehab together and support each other in whatever barriers that we have, whether it's mobility or mental health or vision. There's certainly a lot of things. How can we continue that in a way that is sustainable? So I was on active duty orders for 4 of my 8 years. And then the other 4, I was a GS employee. And I had 6 weeks of vacation. I had a very high GS level, all federal holidays off. I had a flex schedule. Yeah. And I said, I'm not working Fridays. And that was really to protect my time because I worked too hard and too many long hours. I get, my priorities get out of whack pretty quickly. But I realized the surge, was waning. And like we had discussed earlier today, I finished the last of the combat injured in 2016. And I said, the mission here is done. It's not a sustainable government program. So Josh and I said, well, let's try to figure this out. And so we founded the business. We opened up in Chantilly in 2016. And we've grown from there. We had 3 employees and now I have around 25. Again, sharing that mission of we have a roll in the front door and drive out the back. So, and managing the whole project and giving our population, I guess, the beginning of the mission is veterans in active duty. Now they are connecting and they're also sharing that magic with other people, other veterans. Vietnam veterans has been an absolute joy. Being able to meet them, connect them, and share those services because it's such a bureaucratic monster, and it's really hard, and it takes your energy. And are you going to want to fight for what is yours? But when they come and see us, we've got a team of people and say, okay, what's your situation? What do we have for networking community? Are you eligible for benefits?
Right.
Let's get you connected. So that has been just an absolute joy. And then also our civilian population and the Wounded Warriors being able to connect with them with their resources.
Right.
And that just grows and grows and grows.
Right.
So
Right. Wow.
that's a very long explanation of
Perfect.
where I come from.
Perfect.
So
So, Rich, tell us about your military history and how you got involved with the company.
Yeah, so I was born and raised on a small dairy farm in upstate New York. So saw a guy in dress blues, recruiting at the high school, and decided that milking cows wasn't what I was going to do for a living.
All right.
He offered me 30 days paid vacation, which automatically sounded better than what I was currently doing. Of course, very soon after I joined in 2000, and then very quickly we were, of course, in Iraqi freedom and Afghanistan and all that good stuff. Ventured through my entire career, got married somewhere towards the end, which I was told was a smart move. So my family didn't have to go through 20 years. They only had to make it through about 4.5.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was retiring at the end, my wife, who was also a Marine, she had sustained an injury when she had first joined in about 2001, broke her leg during physical training. Fast forward, 17, 18 years later, she was getting an amputation because the bone never took in her leg.
Mm-hmm.
And the amputation was done at Walter Reed. During her occupational therapy at Walter Reed, they said, well, here's some resources. And, oh, by the way, to get driving again, here's a place to go to find that service.
Mm.
That's when we met Tammy, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And it was during COVID, the height of COVID. And so things were very difficult. Her injury was service connected. So obviously there's some grants and some things associated with that to help with the financial burden. But things were very slow in the federal government. And Tammy found a way to help my wife right from jump to, get her trained up, get her the resources she needed, get her the equipment she needed. And then she got back to being a mom very quickly,
Right.
And me being at the time, I think, and still a transitioning service member, 22 years of life in the Marine Corps, you don't just turn it off. Towards the end, I wasn't sure what I was going to do when I retired, what I was going to do when I grew up. And Tammy offered me a position. We weren't 100% sure what that was going to be or what that was going to look like at the time. But I guess I just kind of grew into what I'm doing now in service advisement and project managing, build in the shop, and kind of liaisoning between the therapist up front, external therapist, and trying to translate that into equipment in the vehicles. For me, it was the attention to care, the can-do attitude. Like I have a veteran, I got to figure out how to help them, and she helped them. Didn't know my wife from anybody else who came in the door, but that's the quality of care that was provided for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that to be able to work in a situation like that, especially transitioning from the service, was huge for me. Being part of giving people their independence back, giving people the ability to maintain their identities. And as you said, in this area, it's very difficult to get around anywhere. Public transportation is great as long as you're in the greater DC area. Once you start to get in the outskirts where you can actually afford to live, you can't get anywhere. So that's been great. And getting to meet a lot of other veterans along the way. And of course, all of our civilian counterparts as well. And trying to help that veteran community access the grants that they have available to them, to understand them, especially our older veterans,
Mm-hmm.
Vietnam era, that have these programs and resources that just don't know how to use them, right? They don't know how to, the power of Google, right? Jump on, figure out how do I go from point A to point B,
Mm-hmm.
and then, their quality of life is suffering in the meantime.
Mm-hmm.
And then part of that is also, as I'm walking my life as a veteran, getting into the veteran VA services. My wife also does adaptive wheelchair fitness at Martinsburg, West Virginia. And so that's another community that we're into now. And again, a lot of them are older, Vietnam era, older aging veterans, and they need these types of services, and they just don't know how to get there.
Is that in Martinsburg?
Correct, sir.
Yeah. That's where I get my medical.
Yeah, it's a great VA.
Well, it's also It's also a prettier drive.
It is.
But from here, it's the same amount of time to go to D.C.
Yes.
It's 32 miles from my house to the medical center in D.C. It's 78 miles one way to go to Martinsburg, but it's the same amount of time. So I just go to a prettier drive. It's a nice facility. Really, really wonderful. So describe your role when you say service advisor. Are you actually putting the equipment in the car, or are you project managing, or what's your role there?
So I started out at the beginning. We were trying to figure out what exactly I was going to do, right? So the best place to start was putting equipment in the vehicles. And once we started to, as we were growing as a business, we started to, assess our caps and gaps, right? And then part of that was trying to figure out how to do things more efficiently, how to serve more people quicker and still maintain the quality of care and standard of installations. So then I grew into a role of service advisement, is what we're calling it. I'm not sure if that's the correct term, but that's what we're calling it, where I kind of liaise between the therapists, both internal and external, and customer care. I talk to the guys in the shop. I'm ordering the parts. I'm making sure all the stuff's getting done on time, getting delivered.
A little bit of everything.
A little bit of everything.
Okay.
And so it's been great because I get to talk to a lot of people.
Yeah.
We get a lot of people in seemingly hopeless situations where they're not sure how they're going to be able to do, you name it, and just go, okay, wait a minute, we'll just do, and then you walk them through and they're like, what?
Yeah.
This whole time I could have just, yep. And then, they're very thankful. And it's also being a good steward of people's money, right? So just because someone calls you and says, hey, I want this, $20,000 mechanism to go in your vehicle, then that's when I peel back the onion skin a little bit, find out if they need to talk to one of the therapists to, really see what you need to make sure you're getting the most benefit for your money.
Yeah. As a transitioning Marine, well, we know that it's hard. It's hard to go from active duty, especially retiring, because now you put a sizable chunk of your life into this organization and into civilian life, which is so different. It sounds to me as though you found in this position a similar, not quite true replacement, but a similar tribe than what you had in the Marine Corps, which is golden because there's a lot of veterans that don't get that. And it's a key point in their problem with their transition. And it sounds like it's a really great place to work.
It is. They're very family oriented. It's nice to work in a place that understands your type of mental situation, I guess you could say. Understanding that you're transitioning from a life, it's not just a career, it's a life, into something completely different. Like the civilian sector as opposed to military is just so very different. In the military, you don't go, you don't leave work, you just go home.
Yeah.
Right. And I think part of one of my challenges has been being able to do that. Right. And I'm not good at that. It comes up on my reviews. Like, you need to be able to turn it off. Well, and we also have several former military members on staff. We Marcus Ferran, he was Marine and Army, I believe, too, right?
Yes, you don't like to admit that.
Yeah.
He was.
I'm going to throw it out there. And then Charles Daines, who's Coast Guard. And of course, Art.
So we're bringing on, actually, he's just retired. The Army has, I don't know about other branches, but the Army has what's called a bridge program. And what that is while you're still on active duty, you can apply for an internship.
Yeah.
And so Colonel Yeager applied for an internship. He's an occupational therapist. He was the chief of rehab at Walter Reed. And he had come to a course that we were offering, and he said, this is it. This is a mission. Now, he's done 36 years. 36 years. He started as a...
Is he a colonel?
Yes.
Usually they boot shed 30.
Well, so he's a Mustang, just like me. And what he had started out his career as a helicopter mechanic, transitioned to a pilot, he'll tell you, made the mistake of being an officer instead of a warrant. so he never got to fly. Left the Army for just a very brief time and was exposed to occupational therapy as a possible career. Did that, just totally switched gears, and then now is retired as a colonel. So he did an internship with us for 4 months, which was absolutely fantastic. And now he's coming on board as another therapist in January. So
for our listeners, there are a number of branches that do that. I know the Navy does it, and the Army does it. It's and for the Army, it's part of their Soldier for Life program, which is really awesome. And basically, you can look at a career field and you can say, hey, I'd like to go, if you're a chef, I'd like to work in this restaurant. And as an employer, it's like, oh, okay, you're going to come work for me and I don't have to pay you for 4 to 6 months.
Right.
You're signing me up, and it's a great program. And I'm so glad that you were able to take advantage of it.
So if there's anybody that is interested in shop technician to service advisor, trying to replace you, Rich.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
but yeah, just an opportunity for, like you said, a tribe, and it's a mission.
Yeah, it's a great way for service members to see if this is what I want to do. Because I can speak for military chefs who are enlisted age, so they're working in the residence for an admiral or a general. And there's a lot of difference between that and working the line at a restaurant.
Yep.
And, they go in, they see, I don't want to do that. So it's a great way to try out a career and have somebody else pay for it. And it doesn't affect, by the way, your, when you have leave built up, it doesn't eat into any of that. This is you're basically, still doing what you do. Tammy, how many vehicles or clients do you service, say, in a month or a year? What's your capacity there?
Well, so again, we essentially have 2 businesses together. So driver rehabilitation, I have therapists at Chantilly. We're probably seeing at least 10 probably new people a week. We do have therapists in the Richmond area as well. And we have therapists in Columbus, Ohio.
So let me ask you this. When you're talking about working with somebody with mobility issues to give them more mobility through driving, it doesn't necessarily mean they have to make modifications to their vehicle.
Correct. Not always.
So some of your clients, it's just, they just need to learn a different way.
Absolutely.
Okay. So, well, that's good, because I'd hate for somebody listening to say, I have a vehicle, but I can't afford it. I can't I don't have the money to make a change to the vehicle. I would encourage them to reach out to you to find out, do you need to make a change to the vehicle?
So that's actually, it makes me kind of think of something else. So we've had a couple people that luckily they caught us before they made a huge financial decision. So the veteran community, if they're service connected for their disability, they can get a auto grant that helps them pay towards the cost of a newer vehicle that they need to get modified potentially. And sometimes that's a wheelchair accessible vehicle, which is very expensive.
Which brings me to another question too. I would think that if you're going to put a nice financial chunk of money into a vehicle, that you don't want to do that on a 12-year-old vehicle.
Correct.
So part of the process is to say, look, let's put your money into a vehicle that will last for you instead of the one you got now, which you've been driving till it's just about falling apart.
Yep. And I would say that's part of my service advisement would be, okay, you're telling me it's a 2012. You want to put this $12,000 seat in the 2012 that's worth the same amount as the seat. Is this the car you're going to plan on driving for forever, or are you planning on trading anytime soon? Because that's another fact, is if you are getting a newer vehicle, then some of the auto industries out there do provide some financial rebates on adaptive equipment. So if you buy a new, let's say, I don't know, pick any of them out there, GM, they'll potentially give you $1,000 back on after the equipment has been installed.
I think too, when you run the numbers, you say, if I keep this old vehicle and I put this in it my cost to keep this vehicle running over 4 or 5 years could end up being more than what I would spend for a new vehicle up front.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's important to know, too, that not all modifications, in fact, most of them are not transferable into another vehicle.
Yeah.
We always ask people, if that's something that you're trying to do, please give us a call. But often, the labor to take it in, reinstall it, buy new bracketry, so a lot of times isn't worth it.
Yeah, so it's not interchangeable just because you got the same kind.
Yep.
I've got a Hyundai Sonata. I'm going to get a new Hyundai Sonata, so the dealer can switch it over. That's just not happening.
And the platform may have changed as well. So
and that's part of I think the driver rehab side too is thinking long term. So if you have a progressive disability, it's not just trying to come up with a solution for today. It's 5-10 years down the road, right? So that way you're not coming back for that same financial commitment. Whatever you have now, hopefully will get you, down the next 5-10 years until you get to the next vehicle.
Sure.
And that's the important part, right, of our team is to really manage. I never want to see somebody, especially with a progressive illness, ALS, MS, that waste a breath or an ounce of their energy that they have to make memories for the time that they have left. I don't want them trying to gather this information, research this information, and make a decision on their own. Let's help you figure this out. And then I have a saying, I'll educate the hell out of you, and then you can make your own decisions, right?
Yep.
But I want you to have all of the information in one spot because we've had it as well. I think one of the most proud moments that I've had is when customers have reached out and got a quote, right? And they get a quote from Rich, but they also get a lot of education. And they say, you know what? I went to the competitor down the road that just does modifications and they can do it cheaper. Say, okay, well, that's great. We want you to do what's best for you and your family. But then they come back and they want to pay that a little bit higher rate because of the support that we can give them.
Yeah. It's a complete package.
Mm-hmm.
You're getting your money's worth. I want to direct our listeners right now to the webpage, which is driverrehabcenter.com. I want everybody to take a look at it. What's the best way for somebody to get in touch with you? Is it through the webpage?
Through the webpage. You can also email info@driverrehabcenter.com. We have a Facebook page. And then Rich is very good at communication and email, and his email is first initial, last name.
Artully, RTULLEY @driverrehabcenter.com.
So, Rich, what's the number one modification that you generally make for?
Probably hand controls and left foot accelerators are pretty common. And I guess that's another point to throw out there where I guess you say low tech, mid tech, and high tech shop. So we do a hand control and left foot accelerator would be considered low tech. High tech would be, Tammy's probably be better at explaining that part, but we're talking
semi-autonomous driving systems that integrate with the individual. So you're driving with joysticks, servo motors on steering wheels and gas and brakes. So
Do you have the AI?
No.
Not yet.
Not yet. It's definitely emerging for sure. But you can't just think about where you want to go yet.
Yeah. And another one I think that is becoming more and more popular, especially lately, the Tesla Model X for people who are wheelchair bound because they don't want to have a wheelchair accessible vehicle, the big van. But the Tesla Model X, even though it's a pretty expensive platform, we can put certain equipment in it that makes it ideal for someone who's in a chair. The mid-row comes out of the seats. We put in a mechanism that basically is we'll call it a robot arm that grabs their chair and pulls it inside for them as they're transferring into the driver position, and then they have a hand control to drive with. So back to nobody else knows on the road that you have a disability. All they see is a Model X going down the road.
So for those of us who, I drive a 2009 Toyota pickup with roll-up windows. So I have no idea what a Tesla X is. What is that the truck thing?
It's like a middle-sized sedan.
Okay.
Has the, I guess we call it gull wings or whatever, and for doors that open up.
Oh. Like
it's
like the old DeLorean kind of thing?
Kind of, sort of. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
We have not done a Cybertruck yet.
Not a Cybertruck yet.
I imagine we will very soon.
Probably. We do a lot of, they call it a link seat or a attorney Evo. It's a transfer seat. A lot of our, especially veterans, don't want to give up our trucks.
Yeah.
We love our trucks.
Sure.
But for those of us that are, getting up in age, arthritis in the back, arthritis in the hips, you name it, this is a type of seat that can help you get off the ground and into your truck that just comes up and out and helps you get up. So you don't have to give up that truck. There's so many things that people want to maintain that quality of life. And there are countless ways to try to help make that happen. Of course, cost is always a factor. Service-connected disabilities does help a lot with the finance when it comes to adaptive equipment, money towards the vehicle and things like that.
And then the wheelchair accessible vehicle, we will support and provide education and help you choosing the correct wheelchair accessible vehicle. So what a lot of people don't know is a ramp van is not a ramp van. So you have, just like in your cars, there are different manufacturers, Chrysler, Toyota, Honda, but then there's also different conversions that are shorter cut, longer cut to be able to meet your needs. So if I could tell anybody who's out there searching for a wheelchair accessible vehicle, give us a call. We can facilitate whatever it is that you need. And again, educating you on what's out there. There are companies that are not QAP, or it's a quality assurance program. There are, you can go to a lot that sells wheelchair accessible vehicles, and they're not going to be thinking about the function and everything that you need that vehicle to do.
Yeah.
So
we've had, unfortunately, clients that have found something on, say, Facebook Marketplace, and they go put 30, 40 grand into something because it had a wheelchair accessible ramp for their aging parent. And then they're coming to us, my ramp doesn't work, this doesn't work, that doesn't work. And you start peeling it apart and you're just like, yeah, unfortunately, this is
wrong vehicle.
Not a good vehicle.
Right.
Are there certain manufacturers that are easier to adapt to that you help the client?
For the most part, it's each case is individual. We get that question a lot. Like, what vehicle should I look at? Come on in. Let's take a look at your whole situation. Then we can start to direct you towards the correct vehicle. If you're tall, you're short, your spouse is taller, you're shorter, heavier. Right now, I would say the biggest emerging population is bariatric, which is a whole nother set of problems, being able to fit into a vehicle. But yeah, and I always encourage, don't make any big financial decisions until you can get a consultation.
Yep.
So if you have a truck and in your mind, there's no way I can modify this truck, and then you sell the truck, you may find out later, my goodness, I could have done.
That's too late then.
It's too late.
We're working on one right now that's pretty cool. So veteran has had this Silverado in his garage, got to a point where he needed a wheelchair accessible vehicle. Mobility was, kind of a concern, but he didn't want to get rid of his truck. And this is probably a year and change ago now when we were working on his wheelchair accessible vehicle. And he said, let me ask you a question. If I had a pickup truck in my condition, would I be able to? I'm like, well, we can talk about it. So we have since made it so that he can drive his pickup truck. We're currently putting a topper on the back because he has what's called an outrider that picks up his mobility device and puts it in the back of the truck for him. Has one of those transfer seats that I spoke of. He sits in that, picks up his scooter, puts it in the back of his truck. Now we're putting a topper on the back of his truck because he wants to protect his investment.
Sure.
And he's always driven with a topper. Loves him. So now his baby is back under his rear end driving down the road, and he's as happy as can be because he doesn't have to drive that wheelchair accessible van anymore.
Right. Yeah. It's like nobody wants to drive the minivan.
Yep.
Yeah. That's awesome. Listeners, again, the webpage is driverrehabcenter.com. Want everybody to go to it now. This is one of the rare times when I'm not talking about donating to a nonprofit. So there's no donate button to bang on there, but you do want to check them out. And please, please, please don't make any decisions about a vehicle, making changes to it until you get in to see Tammy or Rich or one of their people there, because they're going to steer you right. I mean, it's clear that they're the place to go to, because right in the name, it says Center of Excellence. So you know it's going to be good. There's no doubt about it.
I'm not sure that we are a service-disabled, veteran-owned small business.
Yeah.
And supporting that and supporting the mission is customers, right?
Yep.
We can bring you into the community.
Yeah, one thing I wish that the VA had was, and maybe they do and maybe they don't, depending on which VA you go to, is a way for the veteran that rates a vehicle grant or the auto adaptive equipment grant had to use it, because they get told, yes, you rate this, and then they'll try to go out and buy a vehicle that may or may not be able to be modified. We had an instance where a gentleman was trying to purchase a Mercedes Sprinter van and then try to get a ramp put in it. Those two don't go together. So he would have bought a very expensive vehicle and then still not be able to have the solution that he was looking for. So I definitely wish there was a way to just direct people to education on how to better use that grant so they're getting the most for their money. And of course, being good stewards of the government's money as well, right? Taxpayers' dollar to go help these veterans, that they're getting the quality of equipment that they need. That's going to last them for, the duration of however long they need it for.
Is there an association of companies that do this type of work? So what I'm thinking of is, along those lines, I think it would really benefit the VA and the veteran if they had a mandatory requirement of a counseling session before they release the grant.
That would be amazing.
So to say, we're not giving any money until you sit down with a trained professional to make sure that you're going to get the most out of this benefit. Because when I think about it, when you think of the other benefits that the VA provides, that is a constant in those. You're not going to get medical treatment until you get with a medical professional from the VA to figure out what you need and how you're going to receive those benefits. So there's got to be a way to push that. And
unfortunately, again, we go back to the confusing system that is the VA.
Yeah.
The grant that Rich is talking about comes from the VBA, Veteran Benefits, and the equipment comes through the prosthetics department and the approvals and all that stuff. And unfortunately, there's also such a high turnover within those departments. And as important as this discussion is, it is a very, very, very tiny part. It's huge to the individual of the prosthetics department's jobs. So they're having a hard time within the prosthetics departments just keeping up with what their jobs are. But in finding the time to do that education, it just does not happen.
Well, I think it would be fine to have that education provided by your company or another company that, as long as there's some sort of organization that can sort of certify that this isn't just a used car dealer they're sitting down with, And
the rules change. So so this is our business, right? So we are on top of what those rule changes are when they come out, where somebody may not have, other VSOs will contact us as well. PVA, DAV, the fund, there's so many different nonprofits, and they will also say, hey, you know what? I knew, but I'm going to flip you to somebody who's... Yeah,
because by the time they get the grant and then get the car, things may have changed.
Well, they may not even get to the car part.
Yeah. I mean, you're talking about, months and months and months, because it's another thing that veterans have a problem with is adjusting to how slow things move in civilian life.
Well, and unfortunately, what can happen is they will use that grant, they'll read it, they'll think they know everything, they'll have gotten consultation, and if the dealer doesn't get paid...
Yeah, that's another difficult thing too, is that, so this vehicle grant, you're asking a lot of times for a dealership to hold up inventory until they can get that
approval.
You know what I mean?
Definitely.
And during COVID, that was difficult. Like cars were hard to come by.
Yeah.
And there wasn't a whole lot of automotive dealers out there that wanted to sit on a car just so we could have it for a veteran.
Yeah.
And then, obviously we have a few of those dealerships that we work with that understand what it is we do. They understand what they need to do for a veteran.
Do you find that those dealers are veteran owned?
No.
No,
Not always.
No, I would say the majority are not.
Yeah. There's definitely a few in Chantilly that have been pretty fantastic at understanding the need, and
We're always trying to network with dealers that are willing to work with.
Sure.
And then we try to help facilitate, make sure the paperwork's done properly, it's sent to the right place, everybody has the right numbers, so that the dealer gets their money in a timely manner and the veteran doesn't have to worry about their vehicle being repossessed.
Wow. Great. Wow. Well, again, it's driverrehabcenter.com. Go there, check the webpage out, reach out through the webpage, and don't do anything until you talk to either Tammy or Rich or one of their people there. Set up a consultation, and I guarantee you they're going to steer you right. Tammy, Rich, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. So for our listeners, we'll have another episode next Monday morning at 0500. Those of you who'd like to get up early and listen to podcasts. Until then, thanks for listening.
The Welcome Home podcast is brought to you by Willing Warriors, a nonprofit organization serving active duty service members and veterans since 2012. To learn more, please visit our webpage at willingwarriors.org.